Welcome to the debate. Over the weekend, the most powerful force in Kentucky politics wasn't a voter at the ballot box,
No, definitely not.
right? Or even a county chair organizing a rally. It was, well, a single post on Truth Social that acted essentially as a hostile takeover broker.
Yeah, it was an absolute Friday night bombshell right here in our own backyard.
Exactly. We're dissecting the Republican primary for Mitch McConnell's open U.S. Senate seat. President Trump executed this dual maneuver that just shocked the state. He explicitly endorsed Lexington's own longtime KY6 Congressman Andy Barr.
And at the exact same time, he pulls another really prominent Lexington figure, businessman Nate Morris, completely out of the race.
Right, with the promise of a Trump administration ambassadorship. It's wild.
It is. And, the visuals of how this played out were incredibly stark. I mean, literally the next afternoon, Saturday, we have the 152nd running of the Kentucky Derby at Churchill Downs.
The timing is just unbelievable.
Oh, totally. The political elite of the state are all gathered there, and there is Andy Barr taking a massive victory lap. He's telling reporters he was deeply grateful and honored.
Mint julep in hand, essentially projecting the image that this primary race was wrapped up before the voters even had a say.
Right, which really brings us to the core question of our discussion today. Does this unprecedented Friday night merger effectively end the GOP primary? Locking the doors before we even get to May 19th.
Or does former Attorney General Daniel Cameron's defiant decision to stay in the race represent a viable, necessary battle for the soul of Kentucky Republicans?
Exactly.
I will state my position clearly right up front. This primary is practically over. Andy Barr has this massive financial advantage, the consolidated McConnell-Gunner network, the exit of his main rival, and the ultimate golden ticket of Donald Trump's endorsement right before the May 19 primary.
Well, I take the exact opposite view. I think Daniel Cameron's presence in this race is totally legitimate and essential.
Really?
Yeah, because unlike Barr, Cameron has actually won statewide before. He possesses universal name ID, and he gives a crucial voice to the Rand Paul wing of the party.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective on why the sheer structural mechanics of modern elections make Andy Barr's victory a foregone conclusion here.
Okay, lay it out.
When we talk about a candidate being inevitable, we aren't just talking about vibes or momentum. We are talking about the cold, hard math of campaign infrastructure.
The bank accounts.
Exactly. As of the March 31 reporting deadline, Andy Barr was sitting on a massive war chest of $4.1 million. Daniel Cameron had just under $765,000.
Which is a huge gap, sure.
It's insurmountable in a state like Kentucky. Kentucky is incredibly expensive to run in because you don't just buy ads in Lexington or Louisville. To reach Northern Kentucky voters, you have to buy airtime in the Cincinnati, Ohio broadcast market.
Right, which is notoriously expensive.
Oh, you are paying a massive premium to advertise to Ohio and Indiana residents just to capture the voters in Boone, Kenton, and Campbell counties. With under $1 million, Cameron simply cannot sustain that broadcast presence.
You are absolutely right about the exorbitant cost of the Cincinnati media market, but I'm sorry, I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why.
Go ahead.
You're treating the electorate like a subsidiary that just gets acquired in a corporate buyout. Coronations do not work in Kentucky politics.
But the money.
The money matters, yes, but the grassroots voters here have a fiercely independent streak. You mentioned structural mechanics, right? So let's talk about the mechanics of geography.
Okay.
Andy Barr is fundamentally a regional figure. Yes, he's been a formidable congressman for KY6 for years. But Lexington and the immediate surrounding Bluegrass counties are not the entirety of the Commonwealth.
Well, no, but he has reach.
But Daniel Cameron is the only candidate in this field who has actually built a 120-county field operation and won a statewide race. He did that to become Attorney General.
Right, he has the history.
Exactly.
He already has the universal name ID that Barr is currently having to spend millions of dollars in those expensive media markets just to build.
But name ID alone doesn't pay for get-out-the-vote operations, It doesn't pay for door knockers or targeted digital ads in places like Paducah or Bowling Green.
It doesn't, but it gives you a huge head start.
Sure, but more importantly, we have to look at what just happened to the opposition funding in this race. Nate Morris wasn't just some fringe candidate. He had loaned his own campaign $4.8 million.
Oh, he was heavily invested, yeah.
And he was backed by an independent PAC that got a $10 million donation from Elon Musk. I mean, we need to look at how political endorsements at this high of a level actually function.
How do you mean?
Well, in modern elections, late-stage endorsements aren't really about changing the minds of individual voters. They act as permission structures for the donor class to stop spending money against each other.
Oh, I see where you're going, right?
So when Trump offered Morris that ambassadorship on Friday night, he didn't just remove a name from the ballot. He instantly signaled to that $10 million PAC to turn off the attack ads against Andy Barr.
The financial friction just dropped to zero overnight.
Exactly. Barr absorbs the institutional McConnell-connected donor class, and he no longer has to spend a dime defending his right flank from Morris.
That is a really fascinating way to frame endorsements as a permission structure for donors. But I would argue that while the donor class might have merged, the voters certainly haven't.
You don't think they'll follow Trump's lead?
I really want to push back on the idea that Trump's endorsement functions as this flawless, hostile takeover. We actually have the historical receipts to prove that a Trump endorsement in a Kentucky primary does not guarantee base unity. You're talking about the governor's race. Exactly. Let's look at 2023. Donald Trump endorsed Daniel Cameron very early in that primary. Did it get Cameron through the primary? Yes. But what happened in the general?
He lost to the incumbent Democrat, Andy Beshear.
Right. And the vital detail here is what Donald Trump said after that loss. He didn't take responsibility. He posted on social media that Cameron lost because he, quote, couldn't alleviate the stench of Mitch McConnell.
Yeah, that was a brutal post. But that seems to be the exact reason Trump pivoted to Barr this time around. He clearly viewed Cameron as damaged goods after 2023.
Perhaps. But look at the incredible irony of how Cameron's campaign is now weaponizing that exact history against Andy Barr.
Oh, the statement they put out.
Yeah. When Trump endorsed Barr on Friday, Cameron's general consultant didn't attack Trump. He issued a statement saying, "Congrats to Mitch McConnell for getting his guy."
Right, branding Barr with the establishment label.
It's a highly calculated move. They are actively using Trump's own 2023 critique to tell the grassroots, look, Trump might have brokered this deal, but Andy Barr is still fundamentally a creature of the McConnell establishment.
Which is a potent argument for a certain block of voters.
If the rural conservative base smells that stench of McConnell on Barr, a Truth Social post isn't going to save him. Voters are highly skeptical of guys handpicked by Washington elites.
That's an interesting point, though. I would frame it a bit differently. I get the theoretical vulnerability there, but I don't think the grassroots will see Barr as an establishment plant when the candidate running to his right just threw his weight behind him.
You mean Morris?
Yeah, Nate Morris. Think about the physical optics on Derby Day. Barr showed incredible political agility. He goes in front of the cameras at Churchill Downs, calls Nate Morris a friend of 20 years,
Right.
praises him as an America First businessman, and graciously accepts his endorsement.
So you're saying the permission structure was for the voters too?
Exactly. Morris immediately put out a statement saying Andy knows what it takes to deliver for the MAGA agenda. Morris gave his voters direct instructions to slide over to Barr.
I hear your point about the optics, but I have to ask a genuine question about voter psychology here.
Go for it.
Do you really believe that voters just develop amnesia overnight because two politicians take a photo together holding mint juleps?
Well, no.
Because for months, this primary was defined by a brutal, bare-knuckle ad slugfest on television. The PACs backing Nate Morris spent fortunes running ads calling Andy Barr Amnesty Andy.
Yeah, the immigration ads were heavy.
They painted him as totally weak on the border. And conversely, Barr's supporters carpet-bombed the airwaves, claiming Nate Morris was fully woke and a fraud.
Primary campaigns are always brutal. You know, the electorate understands that candidates throw elbows to win.
Politicians understand it's a game. The voters do not.
You think the voters take it personally?
I think the voters who genuinely believe the ads stating that Barr was soft on immigration, they don't just erase that from their memory banks, because Trump offered Morris an ambassadorship.
Okay, I see that.
Those Morris voters are ideologically orphaned right now. And Daniel Cameron is standing right there, offering them an alternative that hasn't been compromised by a weekend truce.
But wait, I have to admit I'm struggling with the mechanics of your argument here.
How so?
I hear what you're saying about the grassroots being orphaned. But mechanically, how does a campaign with $765,000 actually capture those orphaned Morris voters before May 19?
It's definitely an uphill battle.
You just said yourself that PAC money buys narratives. Well, the PAC money attacking Barr just vanished. How does Cameron physically reach these voters to remind them of the Amnesty Andy label when he can't afford the TV airtime?
That is the crucial challenge, absolutely. But you don't always need paid media when you can leverage earned media and existing networks.
What networks, though?
Well, Cameron has an established network of conservative pastors, county judges, and grassroots precinct captains from his 2023 run. He doesn't need to buy new ads in Cincinnati if he can dominate talk radio across the state.
Relying on talk radio is a tough strategy against a $4 million TV budget.
Sure, but he needs to tap into the visceral resentment that voters feel when they see that Barr-Morris-Darby Day alliance. To a lot of working-class voters in eastern Kentucky, that alliance looks exactly like the transactional backroom politics they despise.
You drop out, you get an ambassadorship.
Exactly. And we all smile for the cameras. There's a deep, earned anger in the populist base when they feel managed by Lexington elites. Cameron just has to fan that flame.
I think you are underestimating how systematically Andy Barr has insulated himself against that exact populist attack, though. Let's look at the actual policy concessions Barr made to secure this Trump endorsement.
What concessions?
Well, it completely undermines the idea that he's just a Mitch McConnell clone. To get Trump's blessing, Barr publicly promised that he would vote to kill the legislative filibuster in the Senate in order to pass Trump's Save America Act.
Oh, wow.
Right? We need to pause and explain why that is a monumental shift. The legislative filibuster, the rule requiring 60 votes to pass most legislation, is Mitch McConnell's entire legacy.
It really is. He's defended it for years.
Fiercely defended it, even defying Trump on it repeatedly during Trump's first term. By promising to destroy McConnell's most prized procedural weapon, Barr committed political patricide.
Wait, let me make sure I understand the mechanics of what you're highlighting here.
Yeah.
You're pointing out that Barr secured the McConnell-aligned donor money, but then publicly promised Trump he would destroy McConnell's legacy just to secure a Truth Social post.
Exactly. It shows incredible political dexterity. He kept the institutional funding while adopting the populist policy platform.
That's quite the tightrope walk.
He literally stated to reporters on Saturday, "I am an Andy Barr Republican who supports President Donald Trump." He went out of his way to distance himself, saying he is not a Mitch McConnell or Rand Paul Republican.
So he's charting his own lane.
Yes, he neutralized the establishment label while retaining the establishment cash.
I would argue that political dexterity is just another word for trying to be all things to all people, which the base often reads as totally inauthentic.
You think it backfires?
Absolutely. Barr saying he isn't a McConnell or a Rand Paul Republican is exactly why Daniel Cameron staying in the race is so critical for the health of the party. Let's talk about Senator Rand Paul.
Okay.
He is one of the very few GOP critics of Trump in Congress who still maintains immense, unbreakable popularity with the Kentucky grassroots. And Cameron has received endorsements from close allies of Rand Paul.
True. The libertarian wing.
Right. The Kentucky Republican Party has been defined by this tension between the McConnell institutionalists and the Rand Paul libertarian-leaning populists for over a decade. Cameron represents that necessary alternative.
But do you really think aligning with the Rand Paul wing is enough to overcome a direct, forceful Trump endorsement? I mean, Donald Trump won Kentucky by over 30 points in the last election.
I think it proves there is a deep, unmet ideological appetite for a genuine debate. This primary isn't just about who has the most money to buy ads in Louisville.
What is it about then?
This is a fundamental battle over what it means to be a Republican in Kentucky in a post-McConnell era. Does the party simply hand the keys to the next guy in line from Lexington who managed to negotiate a weekend truce?
Or do they fight it out?
Exactly. Does the party demand a leader who aligns with the populist libertarian fusion that Rand Paul has championed? By refusing to drop out, Cameron forces the voters to actually debate these competing visions. A primary must be fought to test a party's own assumptions.
I understand the appeal of an ideological struggle, I really do. But elections are ultimately governed by gravity.
Gravity?
Yes, and the gravity here is that Barr has built an insurmountable coalition in a 24-hour window. He didn't just win a news cycle on Derby Day. He fundamentally altered the physical structure of the race.
I agree he changed the structure, but
When you combine a $4.1 million war chest, the absorption of Nate Morris's momentum, the pacification of those hostile PACs, the McConnell donor network, and Trump's endorsement, the math points to only one outcome.
it's a massive wall to climb. I won't deny that.
Endorsements are permission structures, and Trump just gave the entire state permission to coalesce around Andy Barr.
He altered the structure of the donor class, absolutely. But he has not yet altered the structure of the voters in the voting booths. We treat endorsements as if they are binding legal contracts on the electorate.
They're strong indicators, though.
They are suggestions. Powerful suggestions, yes. But the voters of Kentucky have shown a remarkable independent streak when they feel their choices are being narrowed by elites in back rooms.
You think the resentment is that strong?
I do. The ad wars of the past few months have left deep psychological scars on the electorate, and the conservative grassroots may not be nearly as willing to instantly forgive and forget as the politicians taking photos at Churchill Downs are.
You know, that brings us to a really compelling synthesis of everything we've discussed today. This primary has clearly evolved from a standard succession race into a profound stress test of Kentucky's Republican identity.
That's a great way to put it.
We are watching a live experiment to see if overwhelming institutional momentum, massive financial advantages, and Trump's direct blessing can truly neutralize lingering populist resentment and a proven statewide track record.
I completely agree. It is a direct collision between the raw mechanics of political power and the historical unpredictability of the grassroots voter.
And no matter how many backroom deals are struck on a Friday night, the friction is real.
Exactly. The voters deserve the opportunity to navigate it themselves.
Which means despite all the maneuvering on Truth Social and the handshakes at the Derby, the final decision remains exactly where it belongs, with the voters.
As it should be.
They are the ones who will ultimately decide if the steady, predictable machinery of a managed campaign has truly won out, or if the voters themselves will reassert control. As Andy Barr said on Saturday, everyone is looking for the winning ticket.
We will all have to wait until May 19th to see who the voters actually decide to cash it in for.
Well said. Thank you for joining us for this rigorous exchange of ideas. Until next time, keep questioning, keep analyzing, and we'll see you at the next discussion.